Hello Year 5 and welcome to your second English lesson for this week. Today we're going to focus on using literary devices to build cohesion in a paragraph. Now we looked at cohesion in our last lesson, so we're going to build on that today and then have a go at writing some of our information up in preparation for our newspaper reports this week. So here's an example of one of the paragraphs that I've written. So this is called supper paragraph. So this is the picture that's in the book where they were sat eating their supper at the fireplace. They had supper by the fireplace that evening. It felt safe with everybody together, even though there were creaks and groans and sometimes great roaring sounds coming from the outside. The hurricane was in full force. Now here you can see I've used three very simple skills, okay, to try and build the cohesiveness, so the flow of this paragraph. So I've started with a pronoun rather than all the names of the people. And I've added an additional fronted adverbial, okay, as well as a time adverbial because I've explained when it was as well. But to build up on that middle sentence rather than it being stunted with full stops, I've had a conjunction in there, okay? So just using those three simple skills, I've managed to break down one of those sentences that was originally three sentences into one. And that's what we're going to be looking at today as to how to improve the cohesiveness of a paragraph. So one of the skills we're going to look at is pronouns. Now we know that we can use pronouns as cohesive devices to stop having to ensure that our writing isn't repetitive, okay? And as a result of being repetitive with the start of the same sentences with pronouns, we then have multiple sentences that just don't make sense together. So here I have an example. George and David struggled to balance. The sea was raging. George found a telescope. George peered through it. George and David saw other boats. George and David saw a giant squid. David stood tall. I'm not going to read the rest of that because you can see how repetitive it is repeating the words or the names of George and David. So what I'm going to ask you to do is which proper nouns could be replaced? Okay, what pronouns would you use? I would like you to rewrite that paragraph into your books in front of you using different pronouns. So pause the video and have a go. Okay, let's see if you did a better example than I did. So, rather than repeating both the names at the beginning, I said they. They struggled to balance. The sea was raging. Now I've kept George because George was the one that found the telescope. I can't change that to he because I started with they. So I need to specify who I'm talking about. But because I'm still now talking about George, I'm going to say he peered through it. Now I'm talking about both of them, but I know their names already, so I can stick with they. They saw each of the boats. They saw a giant squid. And then David did something, so I need to address David. David stood tall. The wind blew. They felt scared. They were excited and free. So you can see how I've eliminated the repetitiveness of both of their names by using an appropriate pronoun so that I know who it is that I'm talking about. Well done if you did a better job than I did. Okay, so without these pronouns, okay, the sentences are not going to flow very well, which is why we need the pronouns. But I don't think I did a good enough job here because I think this paragraph could be even more cohesive. I think it could flow even better. So pause the video and have a think. What else could I use that's going to make this flow more? Okay, let's think about using place adverbials. Okay, so place adverbials are going to help relate these sentences to where they're happening. So it's going to give us some additional information and some background knowledge. So this is the paragraph I've just written. They struggled to balance. The sea was raging. George found a telescope. So I've already changed my paragraph with my pronouns. Now what I need to do is I need to add some additional place adverbials. So going back to the paragraph that you have just written with your pronouns, with a different colour or with a little arrow, do you think you can now go back and add in any place adverbials where I have got the starred asterisk? So you need to have 5 place adverbials that you're going to add to the paragraph that you've just written. So pause the video and have a go. Okay, let's see if you came up with some better ones than I did. They struggle to balance on the deck. So I'm talking about where they're standing. I've talked about the sea raging around them. Okay, so we're describing where this is happening. So the telescope was in the boat. They saw other boats in the wild of the sea. So this is telling me where they found these boats. The wind blew through his hair. So we're just adding some additional context to our story to make it flow. However, as usual, Year 5, I still don't think I've done a good enough job. So pause the video and have a think. What other cohesive device could we still add? Think back to what we've learned in the past. Pause the video and have a go. Okay, conjunctions. Okay, so this goes back to our coordinating and subordinating sentences. Okay, so this is our clauses. Now remember that a clause must have an active verb. Okay, so an active doing word. Okay, so conjunctions are going to link our clauses together, okay? Now, by using the links, so the links create cohesion by joining the clauses, and obviously that conjunction in the middle explains how they're joined together, so it gives additional reasoning to our sentence, okay? So we can have time, place, cause, condition, or contrast. These are the 5 different types of conjunctions that we've already looked at in lots of our English lessons. So here are some examples of some words that we could have, okay, under each of our columns. Okay, so we can have all of those words that are all going to help towards being conjunctions that we can use in our sentences. Okay. Oh, I've missed a couple off there. There we go. So without using them, our writing is going to be very disjointed. So that means it's going to be very broken up. It's going to be very static. And it's going to be one sentence, one sentence, one sentence, one sentence. There's not going to be any flow to it. So we could use our place adverbials. We could use our pronouns. But it's still not going to make our sentence any better unless we're able to join some of those sentences together to make them longer. And some of you, or most of you, know how to write multi-clausal sentences as well, okay? So here is the text that's now been broken up into different parts, okay? And our challenge is to now think, well, how could we link all of these clauses together and what conjunctions could we use? So I've written this one up for you so we can have a look at it. So I've done a model example, okay? So here you can see I've used because, so, and, while, and although. So here I've actually started with a fronted adverbial, but I've started with my conjunction at the beginning. So I've actually changed the order of my sentence, which you all know how to do because you all did a phenomenal job when we did our sentences and multi-clausal sentences just before Christmas. So here you can see I've used my pronouns. I added in my adverbials and I've added in my conjunctions, but not only with those conjunctions, I've used them as part of my clauses. And now you can see how much better these sentences and this paragraph now flows, okay? So by linking and putting all these clauses together, it's going to give us that additional information. But do you think we can make it even better? So this is where I'm thinking, well, how do I edit and improve this and make this even better? There's one thing I'm missing. Pause the video and have a think. Do you know what it is? Well, time adverbials. Okay, so we've looked at these before. Okay, so time adverbials tell us when events are happening and in what order. Okay, so I'd like you to pause the video. Can you think of any time adverbials that we could add to those 3 asterisks? We're looking for 3 different adverbials. Pause the video and write them down on your paper. Okay, so these are my examples that I've used. So at first, they struggled to balance on the deck because the sea around them was raging. So here I've added in my time adverbial right at the beginning. Soon, George found a telescope in the boat, so he peered through it. They saw other boats and a giant squid in the wild of the sea. Hours passed and David stood tall while the wind blew through his hair. Now, one thing you might notice if I've used them as part of a fronted adverbial without a conjunction, you might notice there's something I need. Let's see if you can shout it out to me. What do I need? Yes, well done. I need my commas. Okay, so if I'm using it as a time adverbial at the beginning, I need to make sure I include my commas to help me. Okay, so in all the paragraphs that we've now looked at, we've had a go at improving our paragraph 4 times. So we started off by changing our pronouns. It still wasn't good enough. Shocking, Miss Humphrey. So then we decided, well, let's add some place adverbials. Still wasn't good enough. Okay, well, let's try adding some time adverbials. Still not good enough. Well, let's add some conjunctions. See, much better. So those are 4 different skills that we can use. Just to very simply, we started off with what, 5 or 6 sentences? Now I'm looking at this, I maybe have what, 3 or 4. But I've had 3 or 4 expanded sentences where there's no repetition, there's no missing gaps, I've included additional information, and my paragraph makes so much more sense, okay? So here is the whole paragraph put together. So here you can see all of the skills that I have used. If you just take the very first sentence, I've got a time adverbial, I've got pronouns, I've got place adverbials, and I've got a conjunction in one sentence. One sentence, I've used all 4 skills. Okay? If I did that through the rest of my paragraphs, it's going to flow really easily. And quite frankly, all 4 of those skills that you guys can see on the screen, you use all the time. So it should be second nature to you. But that's how we build the cohesiveness to make sure that it flows and it has meaning as you start from the beginning to the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to very quickly watch this short clip to remind us about Hurricane Sandy. And I'm going to model an example of a paragraph to you. And then you guys are going to have a go at doing the same thing about Hurricane Michael. So let's have a pause and watch our video just to remind us.
The destructive power of the superstorm, unleashed after dark as Sandy made landfall. The flooding was instant, the scale shocking. The storm arrived with the high tide in New York Harbour, creating a surge of nearly 14 feet. Subways and tunnels flooded. The water engulfed the construction site at Ground Zero. Lower Manhattan was plunged into darkness. Electricity generators exploded in spectacular fashion.
What's going on? I don't know what's going on. It's not hurricane.
Okay, so I'm going to show you a model paragraph based on that part of the video using all the skills that we've learned today. Now, you're going to need at the end of this task a copy of your quotes and your vocabulary that you looked at yesterday. And what you should have done is you should have put a star next to 2 of your quotes and next to 4 or 5 pieces of your vocabulary, because we're going to try and include them in our work today, as well as using our skills of directed speech. Okay, so here is my example of a paragraph I have written. Okay. So I want you to pause the video and I'd like to read through it, and I'm going to identify to you where I've used all of my different skills. Okay, right, I'm just going to move my face at the bottom because you can't quite see where I've used my direct speech one down here, okay? So let's start at the very beginning of my very first sentence. So already I've started with a pronoun, okay? Easy peasy, it was, okay? Then I've added a time adverbial because I've explained when this event actually happened. Now I'm going to add a conjunction to expand on my sentence, okay? And then here I'm going to add another time adverbial. Along with that, though, a state of emergency was declared in downtown New York. So now I'm adding a place adverbial. As more than 478,000 residents. So even in that little bit there, I've included a conjunction. And now I've got an additional fact. Now I've taken this fact from my descriptions that I looked at from yesterday's lesson. So you might need your resource for that as well. Were evacuated from the city. When the Category 4 storm arrived, more facts, it hit hard with the high tide in New York Harbour creating a surge of nearly 14 feet of water. So here again, I've added a pronoun because I don't need to explain the Category 4 storm again. And then I thought I'm going to add some additional facts in here, which instantly flooded subways and tunnels. So here I've added a conjunction. So this is my subordinate clause I've added in here. Downtown, comma, so I've got my place adverbial. The ever-rising flood engulfed the construction site at Ground Zero and plunged Lower Manhattan into complete darkness. So here I've got my facts. I've taken this from my fact sheet. Helpless residents who had not managed to evacuate in time watched from a distance as electricity generators exploded in spectacular fashion. So here I've added a conjunction to expand on that sentence. Henry, who got caught in the storm trying to evacuate. So in that little bit there, I've actually included an embedded clause in that little bit. But this entire sentence here is going to be my, this here is my reported speech. So rather than saying the words that he said, I've reported it. And then I go into talking about having my additional facts and information, and I've got my pronouns. Now I'm going to go into my reported speech. So I've got my speech marks and I remember my speech burger, okay? Here as well, I've had to use my pronouns because now I'm talking from first person point of view. So it's important to remember how to use your pronouns appropriately. Buildings were torn down by 155-mile-per-hour winds. Okay, so I've got my facts in there. Okay, now if I skip through these sentences here for you to just have a nosy at, okay, so I don't read it all to you. Here you can see where I've included my additional skills. So if we look at this all together, I've got pronouns, I've got place adverbials, I've got time adverbials, conjunctions, facts, reported speech, and direct speech, okay? So that is going to be your task to have a go at about Hurricane Michael, okay? So you can rewind this video and have a look at my example to help you, okay? But you're going to need your fact sheets, your hurricane quotes, and your vocabulary sheets to help you. So you need to now have a go at writing your own report. So use the information from the storybook as well, and use the information from this report here about Hurricane Michael, okay? Now, you can use that additional information and remember to include the same skills. So you can have a look at mine as a model example. Roughly about 8 to 10 sentences. My example there was only 11 sentences long, but it was an entire paragraph. I managed to include all of those skills. If it helps you, go through and colour code and underline where you've used your skills in your paragraph as well. But go back and have a look at my example first to help you. And I look forward to having a read of these when you send them in on Wednesday. Okay, good luck, Year 5.